Good day, everybody, and welcome back to Splints and Whiskey podcast. My name is Liz. I am super excited to be here to talk to two of my favorite medics across the globe. Splints and Whiskey started in early September, and we've had the opportunity to interview and talk to different Army medics, law enforcement trainers, medical trainers, people who are working in the hospitals, all the way down to the command and field level to help protect our troops, protect our soldiers, sailors, and airmen. And what we do in this community is we get together and we talk and we learn from each other about what we're seeing in the field, what training used to be like, what training might be lacking now, and what can we do in the future to build up the muscle memory and the efficacy of our military medical trainers. So today I have an awesome treat because I have two very experienced, amazing medics that have just met today. So you guys are hearing it just as I'm hearing it. That how did two skilled medics who have both been on the battlefield saving their battle buddies, what are they learning and taking away from what they're seeing in combat or in past conflicts in combat? So I'm going to let them introduce themselves to you, but I'll just tell you who they are. First, we've got Sam Patrick. Some of you may have seen his awesome interview, and I asked him to please come back and help me interview because I'm not a medic. I've never been a medic, but I do love learning from you guys. But I want someone who's skilled and experienced like Sam to be able to have conversations that I don't have experience with. So Sam Patrick, thank you for being here. Retired recently from the United States Army. Yay. And then we also have David, and David has such a long last name that he's going to introduce it to you. Thank you, David. David lives in Georgia. He owns his own simulator company, as well as he's a medical trainer and a medical doctor in the country of Georgia. Recently married to one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen, who is also a physician. And so he must be doing something right, people. All right, so I will let you guys introduce yourselves and let's just have a conversation about what we're seeing in the field and where can training go from here with lessons learned of conflicts that we've been in. Okay, so Sam, David, take it away.
All right, I'll give the quick elevator pitch, 30 seconds or less for me. Got the long story last episode, but I'm just retired from the military, 21 years as a medic there, did 4 or 5 years on the conventional side. Nice 17-month push to Baghdad back in the day in 06, 07 as a conventional line medic. So got my teeth cut with the infantry, or actually the Cav Scouts, which are no longer a thing in the U.S. Army, unfortunately. Rest in peace. Jumped over to the special operations side. Did 17 years on the soft side of the house. Collected all the paramedic licenses I could. 13 combat deployments, 5 operational deployments around the globe, multiple international training events, and currently the last 4 years in the U.S. military, I was training our first responders on the lessons learned from tactical emergency casualty care on the mill side and translating it to the U.S. side, which David, I think I'm going to definitely pick your brain on how you guys are doing civil defense training as well, because that's one of the things we don't really have civil defense. Our law enforcement and firefighters would fall into that, but when you start looking at Georgia, Europe, Ukraine, like the firefighters and police are doing a lot of military level kind of medicine. So it'd be interesting to hear about that. So that's the 1 minute pitch. Sorry, but not too long. David, let's hear about your background, since you're the one who's going to be much more interesting than I am. So,
yeah, not really though. So thank you both of you for your time. So I'm David Nartkoshvili. I got a medical degree, not working in a clinic now, so not in a hospital. I'm the licensed paramedic and working in that field. Also the founder of Extra Medicine Center, which is volunteer organization in here, and mostly focusing on the wilderness and austere medicine. And mostly we are working with just the regular people, training in TECC, stop the bleed, all the basics. And also we are working with specialized groups as well. depending on the needs. Also, I'm the member for, it was already 10 years or maybe more in the Nartkoshvili Legion, which is also volunteer paramilitary organization, and I'm the deputy chief and head of the medical section, which mostly focusing on the military medicine. And this thing just, even though it was 10 years, it was all voluntary and everything was coming from our pockets. The main idea was to be prepared for the next invasion, the next challenges, which comes with the war. And we are actively working with MOD. And also in my past years, I've been working and I still work with US and NATO partners with different levels, with different medical and non-medical levels, depending on the objectives most of the time. So from our perspective, so it will be interesting, I think, to sharing the Georgian and some Ukrainian experience. I mean, in the training side, not the actual combat, but actually preparing for the combat. So we'll talk about that, and I'll be waiting for the Seb.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, awesome. Thanks for coming on here. We appreciate you. So I think first and foremost, our listener base is pretty heavy U.S. centric, so we're familiar with how our training is. So for you guys in Georgia, because for instance, you're Liz was telling me that to be a medic in the Georgian Army, you have to be a doctor as well. Is that correct? No.
No. So actually, that's the civilian side. So if you want to be a doctor in the, if you want to be the paramedic in the ambulance, you should have the medical degree. And then you can go to the paramedic course, which is about 4.5 months or 5 months, depending, sometimes more, sometimes less. And after 5 months, you are the senior doctor on the ambulance. So you're senior doctor, junior doctor, or the nurse, and the ambulance driver, which is BLS trained maximum.
Right.
So those two are working mostly in the back of the ambulance. But in the military, they undergo the traditional classic 68 whiskey training. For according the related time, like how many weeks it is, I can't remember that. But yeah, they had, 3 months possibly, or 4, I think, each. So they go there, and you shouldn't have any medical degree before that. It's just what you have in the US Army, because back in the times, we just copied what you had in US, and in Georgia military do the very same. Trying to do the very same.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I know for us on our military side, like for instance, our flight medics go to a paramedic course. Our special operations medics have their own paramedic course. Is there a more advanced skill medic for you guys, or do you just have the basic kind of 68 whiskey and they just learn by doing?
Yeah, for the military guys, regular soldiers, they just undergo 68 whiskeys, and that's the maximum level you can do as the enlisted member of the army. So that's a maximum. There's no 18 Delta equivalent, for example, for SOF, but SOF, the GSOF, let's say, they go outside of the country and do the appropriate training for that, but not officially 18 Delta, locally, I'd say. But yeah, there's outsource for that. But for the civilians, the paramedic level means, so automatically you already have those medical knowledge, what you learned in the university for 6 years. And then you add some mostly PhDLS program for the trauma. It comes with the pediatrics. There's also some, the pharmacology and some other stuff, which is obvious, but additionally there's pediatrics, and you also could be ready for baby deliveries as well. So other than that, it's the same skill set what EMTP has in US, but mostly it comes from the medical background, because it's only 3-4 months, but it's like the refresher for all the stuff, and they prepare you for the calls in the city or in the region. It doesn't matter. But yeah, and you gather all the info, those 6 years, what you learn in the university. But on the other hand, in my organization, so our level is the CLS for the regular members, like a CLS skill set with some nursing and the general first aid, do some treatment for diarrhea, for example, and not only combat-related injuries. So you should have trained CLS level for trauma, then some BLS, not some, but certified BLS, and general first aid. So at that point, we think that it's more than enough for the one guy without any medical background to treat trauma before the doctor or the paramedic comes. And also, if someone has headache or just I don't know, just a pain, back pain or something, they should be qualified enough to assess the information, to do the treatment if they can. But on the other hand, we have the protocol for that. So if we have, for example, the field practice in the Legion, they have the protocol for their own, like the guideline. They can assess everything by their own. And if they can't, they just call us because they already have the questionnaire. Okay, David, we have this, this, and this. We assess that. We have this, this, and this. And I plan to do that treatment. We say yes or no or do something else. So that's how we work. And I really hope and I believe at certain point the military will work that way as well, because that's a problem. And on the other hand, we have outsourcing the doctors. For example, like my wife, who is a radiologist, and will use the knowledge for example, to start this year, like EFAS training with the sonography, which is really, really important. And also there are many, many other specialists in that field, like cardiologists, ICU specialists, and many, many more who are gonna consult that and do the telemed all the time. So we gather all this stuff all together, and we're trying to establish that, because even though it was 10 years, as I told you before, it's still plenty of time and many challenges ahead to establish all this stuff and keep that in the civilian society, because still we are not the actual active military, but the civilians, volunteer civilians like in the Ukraine, because the volume of job done in Ukraine was done mostly from the volunteers in any field. So we try to establish the very same thing in Georgia as well.
David, you bring up a really good point. I'm sorry, Sam, but you bring up a good point that I would love to get Sam's feedback on, and I promised I wouldn't talk, and I am immediately talking. But I know the Army here is doing a lot of research projects at Tatrick and Dietrich for the telemedicine model. Were you going to go there?
No,
I think that's a really great model.
I'm chuckling because I'll be sitting on a grant review panel here in a little bit where we're focusing on AI stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, so I'm actually waiting for that Zoom to dial in, so that's why I keep glancing over here. I want to, before we jump into the telemed, I just want to kind of like get some, because I think one of the big things is when we can talk about things that like the lay person may not quite understand. So when you're talking about the CLS and then the Legion, what was the full title of the Legion you're talking about?
The full title is General Nartkoshvili Legion. So
okay, is that kind of like the equivalent of the territorial defense force that we're seeing in like Ukraine?
Yeah, could be. So actually, we are actively working with MOD. So it's not officially territorial defense unit, but that's a volunteer which has those, let's say, different parts, which is the military line, which is actively working and training with the military, different units and with different objectives. There are other groups in the Legion, like, for example, the medical side, which also works in the military and the civilian side as well. There are logistics, there are communications, and many other sections who works broadly both in the society and with the military as well. But so in the future, I think it will be the territorial unit as well.
It sounds like, so like for what it sounds like to the U.S. equivalent. So we have obviously active duty, National Guard. Then every state has what's called the State Guard, which is kind of, it's a paramilitary. It's paramilitary, but it's like loosely aligned with the military. So that kind of sounds similar, because our state guards, they vary from state to state, but yes, they're focused on logistics. They have medical sections, they have communication sections, and we see them mobilized over here for disaster response primarily, but could be very similar. So, and then you were talking about the CLSers inside that Legion. They're non-medics, is that correct? They're non-medical people. And then how long? Because that training pipeline you talked about sounds pretty robust to get them to the level where you would be comfortable having a non-medical person do a telemed consult. Like, so how long does it take for you to get someone qualified as a CLSer in the Legion?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the one thing is that in the medical section, what we have in Legion, there are also several groups, and all the people, I mean, if you are the cardiologist, for example, or the general surgeon, you still undergo the CLS training just in case to be
Mhm.
still qualified in that. And all the guys are qualified at the same level, and then they go to certain directions. So we are still establishing the whole system, and there are many things should be done to work perfectly. But about the CLS training, so ideally, I mean, not ideally, but formally, it should be 40 hours. But
Okay.
mostly we do one thing. So we have members in different regions in Georgia. And as we are volunteers, it's impossible to gather all these people for 1 week or 2 weeks at one place because we work in our daily lives, we work all the crazy stuff we do in our lives, and you can gather all these people. But what we did was the same as the deployment has, like the short videos, but we decided to make about 24 hours long video lectures, which are like sitting like this with a monitor or the projector or something which just makes the appearance something on the back, and also some actual training aids, the tourniquets, the IVs, and many stuff, which also is in our CLS course. They say we send those information, all the videos and lectures and books which we wrote as well. So they have about 1 month to prepare for that, and so whoever pass this 1 month period and they pass all the exams, which are all the CLS guidelines, also communication, also telemed stuff, nursing stuff, BLS, and the general first aid. For that, they have 30, 40 days. And if they pass the exam, theoretical exam, we have the field exercise then. And we actively work with the NOD. We use their infrastructure, and we spend about 5 days in the field. So in the 5 days, we only the hands-on practice. For example, so as I hated in my previous years and my starting years when there was a military guy explaining MPA for 20 guys, just showed one MPA placement. Yeah, everyone understands that. Yeah, and yeah, your training is done. We never do that.
Yeah.
So everyone should perform that. I mean, for example, the MPA, even inserting to each other, also inserting by themselves. So our philosophy is that if you can insert something and feel on yourself, is really good for the practice because you feel what the patient feels. But we always consider safety measures. It doesn't mean you should be really hardcore and do the eye gel every single time you train. But there are some extreme guys who do that, which is I'm not against that because if you can tolerate that, that's good because you feel what the patient feels and you are not feel like cocky guy who just finished the medical training and wants to save everyone. So after
Yeah.
those 5 days, we have plenty of scenarios, plenty of hands-on, and mostly we are focusing on the practical side and also giving them the best scenarios what we can. I mean, most realistic, what is in our hands. We don't use many of mannequins. We mostly use the real persons because they feel real. And on the other hand, we don't have $500,000 for those are really good what they're called the CMAD for the who manufactures the soft whites TACMED solutions, yeah. So we
Yeah,
Right.
have
yeah.
those large and really good mannequins, but on the other hand, as we could afford those, we can afford ourselves. And also I play the casualties, I mean almost every time. And we do all this crazy SFX and simulators. And there was also that this was the idea to actually start own simulator company because it was expensive, and now we're manufacturing the same quality here as well. So and also to go back to the question. So sometimes I speak too much, and please tell me. So we give them all the papers for the telemed. So that's also the let's say the default by default part of the syllabus because without that we acknowledge that we won't have many medical guys, the doctors and some other specialists, and we'll have plenty of working bees. We'll be trained in the CLS and nursing stuff. We'll be really good assistants, And we also teach them some advanced techniques as well. I mean, it's not that advanced, but still the chest tube placement, for example, they won't perform that, but they know how I will perform that. So they're going to assist me, for example, how I like. So that's also our approach to that, because we always tell them, so it's not your job actually to do the crime. But if we be together in the certain point, you know what I will do, and we'll work together without even talking. I'm just looking at you. You know what I mean with my eyes. So I also understand you because I know your skill set, and we work together. So now we try to go to that way, and we just recruited about 30 people, and I hope we'll do really good job training them and preparing for the real cases.
Yeah.
Nice. So during your guys' FTX, the 5 days that you're in the field, how many first, like, what's your instructor to student ratio for that FTX?
Yeah, that's a good question. Also, the instructor slash assistant instructor ratio is about 3 to 1, sometimes 2 to 1,
Oh, wow.
depending how many we are. But mostly the senior instructor ratio is about 1 to 6 or 1 to 7. But we don't train anyone above the 15, like the group is maximum 16 people, not more. But the last time, what we did the last year, I mean, the huge training was about 20 from the medical section, instructors and assistants, and there's 16 of trainees. So actually, we were 1 to 1 ratio, even there was a 1 to 2
Great.
actually.
Yeah.
So the thing is that from those 20 people, 4 was experienced, like senior instructors. But other than that, they're just good guys with good intellect and high IQ without any medical background, but they were really good at helping, also learning, teaching others. So that's also really good practice, because if you have an opportunity to have a mentor and also the assistant instructor to them, to actually, whenever you train someone, you learn much, because sometimes you get more questions, sometimes you think about the certain topics from the different perspective, and you learn much better that way. So yeah, mostly the ratio is that, and we won't do any above than 3 or 4. I mean,
Okay.
that's the radical if you do like 6 to 1, but that's really rare.
Yeah,
Wow.
no, that's one. I teach CLS for us out here, and I wish I could have a ratio like that. You
Yeah,
brought
that's amazing.
you brought up a really good point. That I like learning by teaching.
Yeah.
I think that is, I've learned so much more medically by being on the podium and figuring out things in real time, and like, so building an instructor, we're going to go down this rabbit hole real quick. In your opinion, what does it take to make a good instructor? Because like you said, high IQ, adaptable, all things that I highly agree with, but like, not everybody can teach. And like, we have this saying in the US where those who can't do teach, which I think is absolutely moronic and opposite, like, because I need the people who can teach to be able to do, but also be able to teach what they do.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, what do you think makes the best instructor, not just medically, but just across the board?
Yeah. So I made a few notes here, and we can go 2 directions. One is like how, in my opinion, how to make someone good instructor. That's the one line. And the second line is whenever you can't make someone good instructor, for example, but how you can optimize the energy and resources. So I'll start with the second one, with the optimizing energy and resources. So it's also not about the being a good instructor, by the way. So it's about how well you can speak, and sometimes you can learn that, sometimes you can't, because there are many great people in country, for example, but the problem is they can't reach the person. They can't reach the way we want to reach, because sometimes they do really good stuff. I mean, really good training, but people doesn't listen to them because of some of the reasons, which is maybe other podcast theme, like how to approach students and how to teach them, and what are the methods and the techniques to reach someone's heart. It's poetic still, but you should know something, right? But on the
Mhm.
other hand, so how we optimize that? So we have the instructors, for example. I have 3, 4 brilliant instructors who worked really well. But on the other hand, so if we want to optimize those, we record all the lectures where this guy speaks really, really well. We
Huh.
send those, we already recorded that. And it's really, I'd say, whenever you listen to them in every region in Georgia, which is dispersed, you listen to them and you try to be as polite as well speaking. I mean, speaking well and all this crazy stuff, which is good for the good teaching methods. And then how? So whenever they know, so these people, they know their job. They are straightforward, not speaking just outside of the box all the single time, and they're just reaching me directly with speaking most simplified language as possible, and then we go to them. And even if I send someone really rocky or with a basic train, they already know what to tell them. They already have the plan, they already have everything. So sometimes we optimize that way, which is really good because we train them virtually, like sending all this stuff. But on the other hand, to how to become or maybe make someone good instructor is to have plenty of hands-on, and also just, let's say, everything needs experience. If you want to rate someone as a good instructor, which is really hard, you should keep them as close to you as possible and encourage to teach other people, but with you, like supervising. And for my experience also, if I have someone and I supervising them like training other people, right? So the thing is that I'm not um, interrupting all the single time if I see something error or something, because they should keep the flow. They are keeping their flows. They're saying what there is logical or maybe correct. You maybe forget something, but they finish their session, and then we assess. Okay, this was a problem, and that's the reason why you had this mistake. And that's the one part, not interrupting and encouraging that mistakes is okay, because that's a training. So in training, both instructor and a trainee could be mistaken, and that's because that's a training. And most terrible thing, which is in Georgia and maybe in the US as well, no one talks about the feedback, nor the instructors, nor the trainees. They say
Hmm.
everything was perfect, even when it's international Georgian training. And I'm trying to be really brief and general, saying everyone is always happy. There's no negative feedback.
Huh.
Yeah, everyone is happy. So that's a terrible thing to for the trainees, but also for the instructors, because that way, if someone isn't critical and they don't have anything to like something negative against you or something, you always think that you are the best and there's no one better than you. And that way you're becoming worse and worse
Yeah.
every single session. And then you're overconfident, and then you make a ton of training scores for the other people. And the second part for making good instructors is to give them opportunity to work in the real life. For example, bringing those in the real hospital setting, for example, or maybe in the morgue, for example, or always you have someone friend when you don't have any like license or pass for the hospital to go in. So you can always just bring one guy with you. Okay, there's one friend of mine. He'll assess some of this stuff, and learning from experiencing and observing, they're learning much more, and then they can speak by their experience as well, which is
Right.
really good for the competency of the instructor. Because sometimes when you just speak about the basics and you never performed anything, or maybe didn't do any like live tissue training. Even live tissue training is really good for to be the confident, because you say yeah, I've been working. I never worked in the battlefield, but I've been working with the pigs. So in those 100 peaks, I assessed this. I have this instructor, and I felt how it wasn't. Then I explained to you that, and that way, that's really good. Otherwise, I don't know how to be any good, because also when working with the Ukrainian instructors, there are many good people, and I can say there are few which are brilliant, because the same approach all the single time, because they won't speak like all the crazy stuff all together, just straightforward, just going as it is, and they know how to grow other instructors. And surprisingly, they go with the same approach, which takes times, because if you can't build a Rome overnight, that's impossible. So that maybe really good advice is also to be patient as well, because it takes really good time to reach a certain point. And every single days, me and my friends, we feel dumb every single time because we're new stuff, and then we realize we don't know nothing, and that's really stressful. But there's also a way to go that way, because we back in the times we had really good mentors, not the medical, but in the life. So they learned the same stuff to us, like the leaders of the Legion as well, because that's how it is, and that's applicable in every single sphere, in the military, in the civilian, in everywhere. So sorry for my long speech, but that was.
No, that's it. It's great because I'm jotting down notes as you're going. So I think, Liz, we might have to do a leadership podcast too, because David's got all the answers to the test. But like,
I know. I feel like you guys are international twins. So if I'm smiling really, really big, it's because I'm proud of myself that I've hooked you guys up, because you remind me so much of each other. It's like passion loves company. Oh, I love you both. Okay.
Well, you brought up some really good points about, like, so some of my pet peeves from medical instruction is medical terminology. Like, medical terminology is fine in the hospital, but when I'm teaching people who do not understand medicine, like I had this come to me the other day, like a kid was like, "What's this word mean?" I'm like, yes, why are we using big words for people that just need to understand the basics? Like, do you guys see that in Georgia, where like, so your CLS classes, it sounds like you focus on plain language as opposed to going down the 25-cent medical terminology words, right?
All the time,
Yeah.
just trying to simplify everything. But on the other hand, for the further reading, there's always those medical terms. If someone is interested and to be like feel more acknowledged and like the brightened, they can always Google those, because they're also really tiny lines. So there's something really long Latin word which doesn't mean anything to us, but you can learn that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's been my thing. It's like, cool. Like, I can sound really smart if I'm talking to a physician, but when I'm trying to teach a mechanic how to do medicine, I'm like, all right, because working with police and fire, actually working with cops on our side, like first of all, that's a very hostile working group to gain their trust quickly, which I think that's an incredible, like, instructor credibility, like in building rapport with your students is huge. And I think you brought up some really good points on how to do that, and most of it revolves around humility. And I find that me getting up there and telling my mistakes that I've done is a great way to disarm people. Like, hey man, like, I'm not perfect, far from it. Like, I've made all these mistakes. Here they are. I'm here to make sure that you don't recreate the same mistakes, because you don't need to kill people for no good reason. I think too, you brought up a really good point about instructor development. Is if an instructor messes up something on the podium, you don't, as a senior instructor, correct them on the spot, because then you're eroding their credibility with the students, which I think what the tone of everything you brought up was like, we need to keep our instructors credible, maintain that credibility, and here's some steps to do that. So like, we could go down this rabbit hole all day long, but I think one of the things we talked about in the beginning before we started recording, like, old is new. Like, we're seeing the old battlefield problems from World War I, World War II being displayed in the current conflicts, mainly due to the tyranny of time when it comes to evacuation. How are you getting non-medical, like, because that's one of the biggest things we struggle with in the U.S. military is getting commanders to care about health service support. Like, how are you getting people who are non-medical to care about the old problems and how to simply, like, because Liz told me about, like, hey, people are defecating on themselves and now they're getting bacterial infections from the abscesses. That can be solved by someone who's non-medical. How do we get these people to understand that these complex problems have simple solutions early on in the continuum of care?
Wow, good question.
Yeah, that's really good question. And so we have also the quote in Georgian. So everything new is well forgotten old. So that's the same. I mean, international thing. So about this stuff, as I mentioned before, still are the movement is much older, but so how the Legion started is 10 years old. And actually, so in my practice as well, there's, I mean, starting 5, 6 years was really slow. And I'm making the introduction for that was really slow. And we were focusing mostly on some like active dynamic stuff, like the tourniquets and some blood, and which is looks really good and sexy and so on and so on. But and also we didn't have any resources. Now we are about 2000s, and for first 5 years we were like 60, 100 people, really really few. And those past 4 years we actually start like glowing all the
Good for
way.
you.
And this time, so those 3 years also, the 3 years also keep our traces to be the standardized CLS and all the training for the basic courses for the safety and other stuff. And actually this year we realized, and actually we realized that, but we need to have any resources. From the last year, we actively started PFC stuff, but not the classical PFC, but also using Caucasian war experiences as well, because I'm sure about that. We will have the limitations in the medical resources because in Ukraine there's still plenty of places from Poland, from the Baltic states, from many other countries to get all the medical supplies and all the other help from the West. But in here, less likely. I mean, not from the Russia, not from the Black Sea, less likely from the Turkey, not sure from Armenia, Azerbaijan, not sure also. So we should be relied on our own. So I'll answer that also the two lines. One is that we are now working on a PFC as hard as possible and also incorporating non-medical personnel in there while training in the trauma, in the general first aid, nursing care, and nursing activities and procedures. And also, I think that's the best approach, in my opinion, to be proficient in a telemed and have the network of the doctors in
Hmm.
in the country. Because on the other hand, there are many things should be done virtually, like just connected with someone. And I always remember one thing, which was on there's a one Discord channel in the which is from the European medics, and you may know that. So there's a one day when I just joined the server, and there's several channels of the telemed for
Yeah.
something, and there's a one guy explaining from the Belgium in Ukraine in the basement how to perform some of the medical procedures, and I was amazed
Yeah.
because in the modern world, if you have an internet like from the Starlink or whatever, and you
Hmm.
can easily connect to someone not even in your country, but somewhere in Belgium, how to perform several, I mean, really, let's say, really complicated medical procedures or just medical decision making. Or yeah, we have these problems here. We know how to assess those stuff. Someone learned us, teach us. But on the other hand, we don't know which medication to give them. So because we have plenty, but we don't know what to do. So can you please help us? So we want to develop ourselves in that way because I think so. If we train them how to assess the situation and also how to correctly make the questionnaire. I mean, that's also the philosophy and also methods of doing, make those questionnaires, what to ask, what to don't ask, or maybe ask that later, and gather all the medical information, all the medical history. Then it's far easier to connect to somebody which works at the same time in the hospital, which is also really good resource and really, really say precious resource for that, and ask them from the distance because I mean that's the way, because from our practice from the volunteers I can't get all the medics and all the doctors at the same time because they're working, but we should find a way. So we've been thinking about that, what to do. So we realized that, okay, so we're going to make some guidelines or maybe some questionnaires. Okay, so and if my non-medical guys who have time for training today, and if they'll be proficient and efficient in that, we can rely on them. Just one medic or one doctor with 10 working bees, and also opportunity to call someone who knows much better and much more than us. So I think that's the most efficient way to train those working bees and give them uh, confidence, I say, because they're really important, and use their ability to work as the bees for the queen bees. So I think that's the most appropriate approach in the country now, in Georgia, but not in Ukraine, for example. But in Georgia, we'll have these things most appropriate, I think.
Yeah. I think that telemed's hard. Like I'd say, like, hearing, like, you brought up the prepare your script, basically, before prepare your patient report before you pick up the phone and call them, because, like, I think that's one thing that is hard to train, is like, no, you have a very limited resource on the other end of the phone. Like, try to have all the answers to the test, or how do you predict what you're going to be asked, and then try to get that data points before you call the doc on the other end. And like, too, the medical, I have to give credit to a mentor of mine. This is not my original term. The medical mafia, the global medical mafia. Like, it's crazy how much telemed happens just from your network. Like, hey, I can pick up a phone and call, because, like, you're doing osteomedicine right now. That whole community is close knit, and, like, you can call probably Sean Keenan across the globe in Colorado, and he can help you out. Because I think that's what, like, a lot of what we're seeing is there's people doing what we're trying to do in the military side of the defense side. Like, for instance, expedition medicine. To be cruise ships are another thing that have a ton of experience doing remote medicine in the telemed. Like, to be fair, I think Carnival or Norwegian Cruise Lines was kind of like the catalyst for bringing blood back to actually, I think it was Norwegian Cruise Lines, because that's the Thor guys are over there. Like, just taking the lessons learned from other industries, and like, hey, they made the same mistakes. How do we fix that? And then two, my brain just disappeared. I apologize. TBIs are real. So and I like to hear kind of like how it's super cool to hear the emphasis on, because, like, prolonged field care, for instance, like, I have my opinions on the terminology behind it, but, like, it's not just a medical problem, because I can't do this by myself. I need to have non-medics, and how do we teach and train that? And emphasizing that's important. And it sounds like you get a lot of buy-in from non-medical over in Georgia, because that's, again, so much of our problem in the U.S. military, for instance. Like, I joke, anybody who's in special staff in the U.S. military, which the surgeon cell falls under, basically no one really understands what they do, so they just assume you're doing it right. And then, hey, doc, you good? And we're like, yeah, man, we're great. Like, okay, the med plan's complete garbage, but good luck. Yeah, I think that's one thing too. Like, for like your integration medically throughout, like, how, when you're doing these medical training events, do you have any pushback from the non-medical people on wanting to be actively involved, and they kind of, like, they're getting their hands dirty?
So can you ask me, I mean, specifically at what point?
Yes. So basically, it sounds like your CLSers, your non-medical people, do you ever get pushback, all right, from senior level people, or, I guess, passive involvement? Or is
that's
it more,
a good word.
Or is it more passive involvement, or are they, like, taking a primary stakeholder ownership in the training, and you kind of are just facilitating?
Oh, no, actually, so we are independent in that. So from our side, as we are partners with MOD, and actually they're our superiors. So their objectives, they're asking us, but still, that's, even though it's several years, it's still new, because, as you know, all the governmental and official structures is really slow and really big and really rigid. So there's not much flexibility. But on the other hand, to follow the question line, so in the volunteer services, everything is flexible. One day, for example, we may just wake up, okay, we need to do something else. Okay, just calling my brother, okay, just, do you want to join something? Yeah, I can. Do you have time? Yes, I can. Maybe 1 week. Okay, let's do it in 1 week. And then we have to be the connections with the MOD. Yeah, it's a slow process, and they have the passive involvement. But when it comes to the internal training and internal approaching and do the guidelines and all the stuff, it actually depends on us because but in the end of the day, it's on us what we'll do. But we facilitate everything with them. But when it comes to the training, that's what I like Legion and I love our process is that there's no pushbacks. So if we decide that we shouldn't teach them, I mean, saying on the medical side only now, if we want to achieve something on the medical side, we are free to do anything we like. And sometimes even I always prefer to be to not observed because sometimes we do some extreme stuff which can't be appropriate, for example, for official agencies or something, because sometimes it's related to safety, for example, sometimes it's not, but I'll give you an example. So we always talk too much about the safety. And every single time the people like, okay, we understand that. But but on the other hand, when it comes to the scenarios, for example, everyone is running wild. So
Yeah.
sometimes we shoot them with the plastic bullets or maybe throwing them some grenades and sometimes you feel that really bad. And if someone sees that, they'll say, okay, they're neglecting those safety rules and safety measures, and we can do something against that. But on
Yeah.
the other hand, we don't care about that because if we teach them, we teach our way. But on the other hand, if they want to teach us their way, we'll do. But that's really a small portion of the whole training. But on the other hand, it's my opinion for every single agency or maybe unit, they should always have independency, how they want to, how they feel. But there's always a milestone or maybe the standard. Okay, you should be on the level of the standard, but if you go beyond that, that's okay. You shouldn't go just down there, like if you know what I mean. But above that, there should be no interference for anyone, even from superiors or just anyone, because that
Well, can
way
I
we
interrupt?
just
Can I want to
kill the
interrupt
flow.
this? I'm sorry, David. I want to interrupt this because
Sorry, Liz, if I understand the question correctly.
uh I think he did. I
Or
mean, he's
just a bit-
saying, I think he did. Yeah, and I see this. So this is why I'm interrupting. Is that it sounds to me that people, uh, non-medical entities that you're working with, they see the value in medical training at a high level, and maybe that's from experience. Maybe that's from current conflict that you're so close to that by locality. You're so geographically close to an active combat zone now that it raises the respect level for being medically trained. That could be a reason. I don't know if that's the total reason, but we do run into that here, and I feel like you've said a lot of things about it's something that Sam does too, and and the best people that I work with, I hear them do. You kind of have to use a key quality that you have to have in your job is resourcefulness. You're using YouTube, you're using your network, you're reading literature, you're talking about lessons learned, all of these different things. Um, what I've noticed is a trend when I go to a non-medical, however, it's a military, like a trade show or conference, and I'm dealing with non-medical military members. Uh, the resource that we're not seeming to grasp, which is what's lowering our training, is that uh, they do have the guidelines, they do have the requirements, they have the curriculum set, like what you're saying, to at least to have a basic set knowledge, but they don't have the time to train. Time is like a valuable commodity. And so if they're non-medical, it seems that the medical training is just rushed. You're rushing through it just to let them hit their certification.
Yeah.
And so I think we could do a better job globally or and everywhere as using time in a better way. Would you agree with that,
Yeah.
Sam, and well,
Yes.
both of you guys? Yeah. For all of
And I
us, we're so into, we love training because we're medical people. We love it. But for those that are like in artillery or something, they might want to just check the box, or in the reserves. They just want to meet the requirement and they don't care as much, right? So how can we maximize, our number one resource of time to make sure we're not just checking the box on the
Yeah.
curriculum? I mean, your student to teacher
It's a big
ratio,
problem.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is because we run out of time. So we rush through the certs, the recertifications
Yeah.
yeah, then they might not be well equipped if they do have to save somebody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's really international thing, and in Georgia as well. That's why I told you before whenever we started those ASM all service members and the CLS training. So there are the 8 hours, which is ridiculous. So you can train anyone in 8 hours, and that's kind of lying to you. I mean, the self-lying mechanism. Also, the same for 40 hours. It's not enough for the CLS, and we do that for 80 hours at least. I mean, 80 hours is for the actual hands-on and plus those 24 hours for the lectures. And still we think it's not enough because when we assess our people, they're not ready. And we always in the mindset like we are doing something wrong. But on the other hand, the most important thing, in my opinion, in my guys' opinion, is that self-development and self-learning is the most important thing. Because on the other hand, I had the same conversation with my colleagues from the US and the NATO whenever they have any training or something. When they come overseas in here, or it could be a really good advice for anyone who goes overseas or maybe something really far away from the home. And they train people, the didactics part, the lectures should be decrease the time as much as possible because you can always listen for the podcast, for the video lecture or anything remotely, just anywhere you like, from the bedroom, for the kitchen when you eat something, and you just use the time of a valuable person with huge experience, just in person with hands-on practice and everything. And that way you optimize those rushing and everything. And I've been working with different agencies for the first aid training and some other stuff, and they're always pushing me and rushing. Okay, you need to teach them CPR and bleeding and all that stuff in 3 hours. Okay, yeah, the payment is good, but just screw you guys because I won't do that because I don't want to lie to anyone, starting from my side. So
Yeah.
I think that's encouraging self-development is the key. Without that, so, and I realized working as a volunteer, I mean volunteering, because I
Hmm.
see my people and I have always problem on that they might know something or I won't be pleasant about how they know stuff. But on the other hand, it's about self-development. If you
Hmm.
encourage them and give them opportunity to develop themselves by themselves, and now this year we're gonna start that actively with the large volume and a huge scale. Without that, it's not possible because we tried every single thing with resources, without resourcing, and nothing works actually. But self-development works really well because me and my guys, whenever we started, when we were in the school, even like tens of years ago. I mean, 11 years ago when I was still teaching, learning, starting in the school. So the only way we learned stuff was just self-researching. But
Right.
we had mentors and told us where to search the information. But other than that, there was no one to learn uh, all this stuff from. It was not, but there was a full of information in the internet, and I knew just plenty of people just researching those stuff. And I think for the military, for the law enforcement, and some other stuff, I think they should encourage that way. I understand that no one has time whenever they go home and they have time to just play with their kids and just have a conversation with the spouse. Yeah, that's still problematic. But there are always the methods whenever you can assess your people and give them the way. It's the
Yeah.
job of the mentor. Okay, guys, just go directly that direction. I'll give you some food, I'll give you some water, just go forward and we'll see how it goes that. So
Yeah.
I think that's the only way in today's society, because yeah, you don't want to go in the library or somewhere just several blocks away from your home and everything is on the laptop or the phone, and just what you need to do is just read or just scroll the information, and that's all.
That's so true. That's so true. Yeah.
I've got a question building on that. So, excuse me. Basically, individual-based continuing medical education is what we'll call that, which requires a massive amount of intrinsic motivation to actually do it right. Because like it's very easy to be lazy. I think the product of that environment. But like, what are some techniques that you use to motivate your people to have that So what extrinsic techniques do you use to build that intrinsic motivation in your people?
Yeah, that's good. So now we started that program actually. So I shared you really new idea of ours, and we want to experiment that throughout the next, this year and the next year. So we thought, and we've been discussing what the methods and the techniques should be appropriate. So we realized that, yeah, we'll do the same stuff. Send them the information and the reference list and the websites, but for example, for the kids, if you just throw at them plenty of toys, they don't know they don't know the starting point because they want to play with all the toys, but it's too many. So you should start just giving them few toys and then change some of them, then remove some of them, and give them ability to choose what they want. So now they realize to start with the giving them information, but week by week give them, okay, guys, just read this, this, and this, then read this and this, and then we'll have the quizzes in every 2 months or maybe 1 month, depending. And it won't be for the rating or for the score system. The main idea of the theoretical tests is that to test yourself actually. And if you want to develop yourself, you'll assess if you failed in 5 exams just straightforward in 1 year, there should be problems. So it's like you should start asking questions, Davey. That's the same passion. So if someone sees that they develop themselves and they see, okay, we passed this stuff and passed this stuff, then we have the system of giving treats, like for the dogs, for example. Yeah, if you pass those stuff, if you like what you do, and if you see you are fit in the system, so we may give you ability, for example, to come with me in the hospital in certain point, or maybe, so if you have, and that's why it's important. If someone sees that you're bringing one guy from your team to the really good place, they're starting question, why he and not me, for example, but you're saying, yeah, the scoring system is theoretical and just for you, but I see that this guy passed those 5 tests out of 5. He's a really good guy, and I assess them. So I'm going to bring him, and you want to bring you as well, just learn and actually take your time for self-development. And also we have some other techniques like, for example, giving practices once in a while. And also that's really hard for the military, for example, maybe for the law enforcement. But we plan in our organization that if someone wants to learn, we're going to send them the training resources like wound packings, the tourniquets, and all the other like IV arms or something. They're going to practice them in 2 weeks. They borrow from us. We're going to send that stuff because, for example, if you want to learn intubation, the trainer is expensive. But if you pass those exams and if you show us that you are capable to do so, we're going to send you that for free for 2 weeks. You're going to practice on that, and then you're going to bring those up. And if something goes wrong or you like that damage the simulator, you just tell us, okay, I damaged something, and we may all pay for something, or maybe we just repair that. And also this is the preparation for the main treat for the simulations, which is the most important part. So whenever you pass those tests, and then you prepare with those individual skills for 2 months, and then we say, okay, you pass those period, and we'll have the scenario for you. And you only see us when it comes to the scenarios. And you may not see me in 2 months because you're preparing by yourself, but you can always call me. But after 2 months, we'll do the huge exercise, and then we'll assess how they learn that practice skills in their home. And then we're going to assess how the self-development works for them and how passionate they are. And the next thing will be for us, I think, will be in January, whenever we experiment this and assess if that works or not. But I hope if we got the results of 30-40% of the whole team, that will be a good success. because it's like the estimating. But if it will be higher than that, that's okay. But we are aiming for 40%, and I think it will work well.
Yeah. I think we pretty much, that's amazing. Gosh, that's really good. I feel like we have time for probably one or two more questions. If that's okay, Sam, I guess you're asking some awesome questions, and I feel like I agree with you that there's a leadership development.
Just one thing also, just sorry for
Yes.
interrupting.
No,
And that also is very important throughout the learning process. The mentor should do the best job to gather the people sometimes once in 2 weeks or 3 weeks and have the brainstorming gathering. Okay, you learned this stuff, and I want to speak you about something like it beyond the medicine or maybe beyond something and like the learning techniques or something. And you just keep the bonding with them as well, because in the volunteers, for example, it's really important to bond with someone. In the military and in police, you're obliged to work with someone. But in the volunteers, we are not obliged. If you don't like something, you just go away, and that's all. But for the bonding, it's also really important to keep in touch and give them ability to speak as well, speak their mind. So yeah, we're gonna test that really well, and we'll see how it goes.
That's awesome. It's like having a built-in accountability partner. It's the person that you look out for your brother. You're give each other feedback. You know, that's great. And it's ongoing.
Yeah, you can shout at your brother, right, at home, if you don't like something. And
right.
You can encourage them to do the same. But yeah, it's still the subordination and the vertical still. But you should encourage everyone. If they don't like anything, they're free to go. Or otherwise, we'll do the same results what we have in Georgia here, maybe in US in some of the units or the agencies or structures. So yeah, it will be the same dead loop and go all around. Yeah.
I think that the mentorship thing is massive. That could be 6 episodes alone on how to mentor people healthily and appropriately, since leadership philosophy is such a hard thing to juggle, because mentorship, like true healthy mentorship, requires like an insane level of trust between both people. Because like if I can't have my mentee come to me and say, hey, this is a problem, like, and then in the classic military fashion, you just yell at them and then make them do push-ups, like that erodes that trust. They're not going to come for you. That push-pull learning is so hard to balance, and it's a challenge everywhere. And I think so much of it is just you either got it or you don't. Like we can kind of shape and influence it, but like for me, the thing I've had some phenomenal leaders throughout my military career, and the one thing that my key takeaway is I've actually learned a lot more from my bad leaders, because there's just so many more of them. Like how to because for me too, like, so I put this note down. You brought it up. What are some of the ways that you try to counter, because the 3-hour medical classes, like they're not long enough to do anything, but like how do you balance trying to get the knowledge into students' brains in a short period of time while not giving them too much false confidence in their abilities?
Yeah, that's also good. And that was the case previously when I was tasked to do the program for one organization. So they're like, okay, we have 12 hours for the practice and the didactics, and we want this, this, and this. And it was a huge list for the paramedic, like the kit. I mean, the same stuff. But on the other hand, we offer, and I always do that. So instead of learning 5 stuff, really broadly, we choose to teach them just one, but do the knowledge in one. One method or maybe one medical procedure. And we did really good at the stop the bleed class, because officially stop the bleed class is about 90 minutes, but we do that for 10 hours. But the thing is that if we promise you to teach you, for example, those 5 life-saving procedures in 90 minutes, that's a lie. But if we do that in 10 hours, that's good. But on the other hand, if you give me only hour and a half, I'll teach you only one procedure at a time, And if you decided that was a really good hour and a half with you, and it was worth it, like resource wise or time wise, they're gonna continue the partnership. And that works every single time because you actually provide them with the information. Okay, it's not enough. And I'm gonna lie to you. And even though I have the let's say I'm a task to do all the CPR and apps crazy stuff in five hours, I always explain them. So okay, guys, if you're gonna hear the tourniquet from me, it's not about that you're gonna go outside and be 100% sure that you're gonna apply that. It's a lie. You'll be lucky enough, yeah, you'll do that. But it's the training is not for that. It's like the familiarizing and entry level introductory lecture about how the first aid looks like, and not like promising them. So okay, I'm gonna give the certificate and everything is fine there, because that's a lie, and everyone hates lies. But that could be a really reasonable way to just prove that. Okay, if you only have those hour and a half, I'm going to teach you only one thing. If that's okay for you, we'll do that. But if you want to teach those five, just multiply those hour and a half and a five, and you'll receive about 8, 9 hours. So yeah, and that's fair. I think fair exchange of time and the resources. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I got to tell you, David, to me, you are extremely wise beyond your years. I, I know that I'm as old as your mother, probably, which breaks my heart. But you, you really do, uh, you really do role model a, a professional development and a skill set that is so respectable, that you're always reading, you're always studying, you're always learning. And what I like about you too is that you listen to the needs of the community, and then you go into literally your warehouse, your garage area, as part of your company, and you test and test and test to find solutions for any problem that your customer would have, or that your teammates or your students might have in the field. That So you're continuing to do that. And Sam, I know that you work on self-development too, professional development, medical knowledge. um I- but I will say, David, you have so much experience for your age, and I'm sorry to say that. I don't, but to me, you really are an impressive person. I think your students are lucky. They're lucky to have you. So thank you.
It could be overkill, but I'm trying. I had really good mentors, and they are really, really great, and I'm thankful. And I'll take a moment to thank them as well because they are really great guys. I'm trying to
Yeah.
be. I'm trying to be. That's still really long way to go. Long way to go.
Well, yeah, we all do, right? But we're putting ourselves out there. I love that we have this community here. It's so fun to be a part of it. I love that you two got to meet each other today, and that you're two of my favorite people. But now you've got you can have an international legion too, right? Of medics from Splints and Whiskey and from all different areas, so that you can continue to utilize each other. My hope is that Sam goes over to Georgia and trains with you, and you come over to Seattle or Tacoma area and train with us, and help one another, because wouldn't that be cool? Like, I mean, we should do it. We should do it. I mean, so I love that you guys have gotten to know each other. Sam, thank you for your amazing questions. These are questions that I was learning watching. I mean, it's so, and it's so telling to me, like, to be able to say, wow, there's some things that we're doing really well here. And then there are a lot of things that we could really learn from David, and learn from, you know, eh, other instructors across the world. I mean, yeah. So I feel like we have to wrap it up though. I think we need to do another call together at some point. David, I'll let you get another break from me. But but I would love for us to get together and do some more discussion on leadership, on planning, training, all the stuff that you're discussing, Sam, because it's true. There's a void there, and together as a community we can fill it. We can fill it. So I want to thank you both so much. We're going to leave it at that, and I want to thank the listeners for listening to today's discussion. If you want to get in touch with either one of these guys and train with them or have questions for them, please reach out to me and I'll make sure that you guys are connected. Any last words from either one of you guys? Sam, David?
I just think is stay hungry and then don't accept no or the status quo.
Yes. Yes, you can continue to be a disruptor, right? Right, Sam?
That's my job.
Yes. What you guys can connect on social media and you'll get that joke, David, about him being a disruptor. All right. I thank you guys so much. Thank you to the listeners and I look forward to gathering all of your feedback and then we'll just continue to grow in this area. You guys have an awesome day and we'll talk next time.